Welcome to the intersection of faith and politics. This is Wall Builders Live with David Barton and Rick Green. Thanks for joining us today. Visit us online as well, wallbuilders.com and wallbuilderslive.com. David, yesterday we had Frank Gaffney with us. It was the anniversary of 9/11, so we've been kind of looking at how we've done since 9/11 in terms of responding to the threat against us. I'm excited today to have one of our favorite members of Congress, Louie Gohmert, will be with us to talk about that as well. He's come under some fire lately, along with Michelle Bachmann and others, for speaking up on this issue.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because Frank was talking about the infiltration that's gone on in so much of the administration and how the administration really has helped accomplish that. And so what happened is you have some really high people in the State Department that it turns out, man, they've got some real direct ties to Muslim Brotherhood. And so what happens is Louie and Michelle and Trent Franks and some others write a letter and says, hey, have you guys actually investigated these ties? And so all they did was ask a question. And when that, of course, the administration, when they got that letter, instead of answering the question, they released it to the media and said, look what these guys are doing. It's a witch hunt. And so they suddenly get attacked for having accused a person of being part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's clearly not what the letter said. The letter is out there, easy to read. So they just wanted to make sure security due diligence had been done. And so suddenly you get the knee-jerk reaction of Republican leadership responding to New York Times and saying, all right, Michelle, you've got to resign off the Intelligence Committee, and you've got to, and I mean, they came after these guys. And then fortunately, some of the other media started looking around and said, hey, you know, these guys are right. Look at these folks that are really high in State Department. I mean, like number 2 and number 3 people in State Department, they've got direct ties to Muslim Brotherhood. And so suddenly then leadership backed off and said, well, okay, you know, maybe not. But what happens is all they did was simply raise the question of, have you looked? And for doing that, it was declared to be a witch hunt, which is one of the things that Frank said yesterday that I thought was really significant is he said these guys, Muslim Brotherhood, they like to insinuate Sharia. In other words, they do things that kind of insinuate and back you off. You know, if I insinuate that you're a racist or if I insinuate you're whatever, you kind of back down. And so that's really what's happened is there's been so much insinuation. They turned this back around thinking they could insinuate Gohmert and Bachmann and Trent and all these other guys and all right, we're sorry, we pulled the letter, our bad, we didn't mean to ask the question, but that's not what happened. And I really do have to say a lot of that is because some of the more conservative media started saying, well, is there anything behind this request? Has due diligence actually been done? And as it turned out, it hadn't been done. So it's really kind of a blow-up that's still in process and still going and still a big thing. But we thought it'd be good to at least give Louie and those guys a chance to talk about what happened.
Yeah, you know, I was surprised, David. What little bit I saw in the media, nobody went into the details of what Louie and Michelle and the others were asking. When I actually read the letter, I couldn't believe this stuff hadn't been asked before. Yeah. I mean, they're raising some serious questions of, hey, these people that are in high levels of the State Department have some pretty interesting relationships with the Muslim Brotherhood. These questions ought to be asked.
Well, they've got direct family members that are in the Muslim Brotherhood. They've got direct family, you know, and it was the kind of stuff that they just simply said, you guys have done due diligence over there, haven't you? And then suddenly it's turned into a witch hunt against them for asking a question that ought to be a concern to everybody. Because Muslim Brotherhood, as Frank said yesterday, these guys are on a civilization jihad. They want to wipe out our civilization. And so it's a fair thing to ask, have you checked these guys out who really have an agenda of wiping out our civilization?
Well, especially when it's not just questions about relationships, but the actual actions that have been taken, money that's been given and found its way to the Muslim Brotherhood, and all kinds of decisions that, man, you sit back and you scratch your head and say, wait a minute, I thought we were at war with radical Islam and trying to stop this stuff, not trying to help it and fund it. So.
And let me be real clear. When I say that they're after eradicating our civilization, I don't mean they're after eradicating America. That's not what they're after. They're after converting America to their viewpoint, their civilization. Instead of Western civilization, it'll be Eastern civilization. So I'm not saying they're out trying to kill every American. I'm out saying they want to change our civilization significantly, and that's what these guys stood up against.
Absolutely. Well, let's find out what they did and how they're continuing to stand up against it. Louie Gohmert, our guest from Congress, when we come back right here on Wall Builders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Over the past few decades, it's been argued that a candidate's private life is less important than whatever qualifications politically he might possess. This argument is a complete and unhealthy reversal from previous generations. As founding father Samuel Adams explained, He who is void of virtuous attachments in private life is, or very soon will be, void of all regard for his country. There is seldom an instance of a man guilty of betraying his country who had not before lost moral obligations in his private life. Private and public vices are connected, and nothing is more essential than that all persons in places of power and trust be of exceptional character. Therefore, as you vote in the upcoming elections, remember that the private vices of any candidate will absolutely influence public policy.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact Wall Builders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back to the intersection of faith and politics. Wall Builders Live with David Barton and Rick Green. With us now, our good friend, Congressman Louie Gohmert from East Texas. Good to have you back, Congressman.
Always good to talk to you, Rick. Thank you.
Hey, man, there's not a whole lot of folks in politics that are willing to take on the tough fights and tell it like it is. You're definitely one of those guys that does that. And you and several of your colleagues, Bachman and Franks and a few others, have taken on this issue of the Muslim Brotherhood and their impact in our nation. And, man, the folks have gone after you guys like crazy over this. And I'm just trying to figure out what's at the heart of it, what specifically you guys were bringing to light and why you've been under so much attack for it. So if you would start by telling us about your letter to the Secretary of State, the Department of State, and what you guys were trying to reveal here.
Well, and actually it was simply calling not for an indictment. It was not to an attorney general or a DA. It was simply to, and it were 5 different letters, Rick, five letters, all different, all had different facts set forth in those letters, pointing out the facts we knew about influence of the Muslim Brotherhood on different departments. So Secretary of State was only one of the 5.
Departments meaning actual departments of federal departments.
Federal departments, cabinet level position, where you had Homeland Security, Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice, for example. You know, we have a letter. I brought it up in one of our judiciary hearings to the director of the FBI. It says it's from the assistant director saying that the FBI was suspending their relationship, which they also refer to as partners, with CARE. Now, CARE is a Muslim organization that in the Holy Land Foundation trial, it came out and people say was proved satisfactorily that CARE and ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, are the largest front groups for the Muslim Brotherhood. And here we have the FBI in their own letter saying, well, because of the evidence that came out at the trial of the Holy Land Foundation in 2008, they were suspending their relationship. Well, I couldn't understand. They've had that evidence going back to the early 90s, some of it, and more, of course, after we got into the 2000s and 2003 and 2005, and after 2001, of course. And I couldn't believe it took till 2009 for the FBI to suspend their relationship with CARE.
No doubt.
So there are all these kinds of things that are spelled out. Relationship with organizations. There's no question there is Muslim Brotherhood influence. And so the question is, you know, we were asking a question of each inspector general in each of the 5 departments, including State Department, would you please investigate the extent of the Muslim Brotherhood influence? And so, of course, where they came first, Keith Ellison, Muslim member in Congress, and they get their willing hack over in the Senate, John McCain, to go on the floor and blast us. And it was obvious from his comments he had not read our letter, because if he had, he would have known there were no allegations. We set forth facts with regard to this deputy to Hillary Clinton. She started out as an intern in 1996 when she was First Lady, and has continued with her on up into her time as Secretary of State. And there was no question that we set out in a letter that her father had been a member, actually a leader in the Muslim Brotherhood, even though we said in the letter, he passed away 20 years before. And her mother had actually started the Muslim Sisterhood, which is the female counterpart to the Muslim Brotherhood. And her mother was very active in that, and then pointed out, she had other family members that were involved with the Muslim Brotherhood. And so we weren't alleging anything untoward from this lady, but we were certainly raising the issue of, just how much influence does the Muslim Brotherhood have? Obviously, they've got some. I think Secretary Clinton spoke at Huma's Mother's University and said there, as I understand it, that, she was there for one reason, and that this her sister, Huma Abedin, and so obviously there's influence from the family. But Rick, that was one tiny detail, and no one, and I mean nobody, has pointed out any fact that we set out in any of those separate 5 letters that is not factually correct.
Well, and some of the stuff that you pointed out is incredibly powerful. I mean, it would be one thing to say, there's someone working in the department that has these ties to Muslim Brotherhood, but there's no results to speak of. But the things that have happened at state from the Tariq Ramadan.
When you override Congress's expressed law saying don't give any money to any government in which the Muslim Brotherhood is involved, and she goes over and hands over $1.5 billion to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, the money that found its way to Hamas. You got foreign aid going to one of. I mean, it's unbelievable who we're actually helping the enemy. Yeah,
and we have been, and so you've got in the Homeland Security, we brought up Mr. El-Biari. He has a foundation that he started, lost a 501c3, but they were called the Freedom and Justice Foundation, which sounds great unless you realize that. Justice means under Sharia law, that means only justice under Sharia, and freedom means freedom to worship Allah. So people can talk about, radical Islamists, they have the same belief in freedom and justice we do. No, this is a little different. We think you should have the freedom to worship or not worship anybody, and they think there's one freedom, and that's to worship Allah. And also, Mr. El-Biari took offense to the Holy Land Foundation prosecution, in which there were 105 counts proved beyond a reasonable doubt that we had people here who were funding terrorism. And he also was one of the featured speaker at the Ayatollah Khomeini Man of Vision huge event that was held, and we don't know exactly what he said because nobody was allowed in unless you were one of those that thought he was a man of vision, and most of us didn't. But anyway, there were a number of things. And then we knew that she had given, she being Janet Napolitano, had appointed him first to her fighting violent extremism working group, and then impressed with him, she moved him to her Homeland Security Advisory Committee, gave him a secret clearance, and according to the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, he told me that they had tracked that this guy got on his own computer and went to some classified information, and accessed and downloaded 2 documents. Now, the director of Texas DPS was told by the Homeland Security inspector that El-Biari admitted that he had gone to the website and may have downloaded something, but he never tried to shop it around. And since we didn't want to burn our source in the mainstream media, we haven't disclosed who it was we knew that he had shopped it to. But he had downloaded documents from classified source and was wanting to shop them to try to paint Texas and Rick Perry as being Islamophobes. And, of course, you know where the term Islamophobe came from. The Organization of Islamic State, or Conference, OIC, that was come up with by them so that anybody that raised issues about radical Islam, you immediately call them Islamophobe. They paid millions to universities, including Ivy League universities, to have seminars and classes on Islamophobia to try to convince our country that it's wrong to point out that all 19 of the hijackers were radical Islamic jihadists. We're not supposed to talk about that. They've also gotten, we've met with FBI. I can't talk about classified briefings, and in fact, I don't believe they should have been classified. I don't think any of the information should not be made public. I think it should be, so people can see exactly what all the FBI has purged from their teaching material based on CARE raising Cain about, here is CARE, a named co-conspirator funding terrorism, and they are dictating policy in the White House. They call the White House and demand that a seminar on radical Islam out at Langley be dropped. The White House make sure it's dropped. It is incredible. All we want to know is how much influence. And, Rick, I tell you, I got a text from one of the top guys at Breitbart after we just started being smeared, and people like McCain, without knowing what they were talking about, coming after us, and even our speaker, who certainly is able to speak without knowing what he was talking about, blasted Michelle and us without. He took up for a woman that he doesn't know, and he says in a statement, I don't know her, but I understand she has sterling character. And five of his members, his own members that he didn't talk to, he blasts us for raising issues about the Muslim Brotherhood. But anyway, I got a text from one of the top guys at Breitbart's group, and smart folks. And basically he said, look, I don't know much about the Muslim Brotherhood, but I know a peremptory attack when I see one. You guys, I've read the letters. Clearly, the attacks on you were not justified by those letters. You must be really onto something big.
That's it.
So tell me how I can educate myself better, because you guys are really onto something big. You've got them squealing big.
You do. And you're just doing your job, aren't you, Congressman? I mean, isn't this what you guys are supposed to be doing?
We're supposed to provide for the common defense, but then on the other hand, we also know you could find from the White House's own website that the Deputy National Security Advisor, the number 2 guy to keep us safe, national security, Dennis McDonough, had given a speech last year to the All Dulles Area Muslim Society, called themselves ADAMS for short. But at the start of that, he was introduced by Imam Majid. Well, he's president of ISNA. ISNA is a named co-conspirator, and the Fifth Circuit and the District Court in Dallas said there's plenty of evidence to support the fact that ISNA is a front organization for the Muslim Brotherhood, and that they have, provided money to support terrorism. And so, anyway, you've got the president of a named co-conspirator supporting terrorism introducing our number 2 guy in security, and then he starts his speech out by saying he wanted to thank Imam Majid and certainly wanted to thank him for the wonderful prayers in the White House the August before, when he led in prayers for the iftar celebration at the end of Ramadan.
It sure.
And so, there's no question the Muslim Brotherhood has influence in the White House, and the State Department, Homeland Security, Justice Department, National Security Administration. We just want to know, we wanted an investigation to see how extensive it is. Is it just so minor it's nothing to worry about, or is it something we really should be concerned about?
Well, and that's the questions you should be asking as members of Congress. And I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate mail for this, but it seems to me like the wolves are not only at the door, they're in the house. And And you guys are shedding light on that. And Congressman, yesterday I had we talked to Frank Gaffney, our mutual friend, who, by the way,
Sure.
heralded you as a hero and talked about the importance of what you're doing and said to tell you hi. I told him we were going to have you on. And but he was pointing out that, here we are. We haven't even defined this war correctly in terms of calling it the war on terror instead of war on radical Islam and that sort of thing. But we're afraid to call it what it is and fight what we need to fight. And here we are on the 11th. It's been 11 years since 9/11. And he said we could have been so much further down the road. We've actually lost ground because we aren't willing to admit what we're really up against and fight it the right way. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely do. We made progress for a little while.
Yeah.
And then in the effort, and it did start under President Bush, there are absolutely moderate Muslims who don't want to take over our country by force or otherwise.
Right.
And in fact, we have moderate Muslims that are our friend that
Yes.
I was just embracing physically in Afghanistan back in April when I was there. These were allies that fought, buried family, loved ones, just like Americans have from fighting in Afghanistan. But initially, they defeated the Taliban in about 4 months' time with our embedded troops, about 500 or less, and we defeated them. These guys are our friend, but, of course, this administration has thrown those allies under the bus, and they're negotiating with the radical Taliban who still want to kill us and destroy our country. So instead of embracing our true friends, this administration thinks you embrace our enemies, you give them a bunch of money, and they'll love you. I would have thought that most everybody, of course, our president didn't have a normal childhood, and he's done remarkably well despite that. But on a regular school playground, you find out if you pay a bully not to beat you up, they don't end up loving and respecting you for it.
That's right.
You don't gain respect, and you sure don't gain any love. The only way to do it is to gang up and whip the bully, and then they learn, leave you alone.
That's right. Then you get real respect. It's just like what Chris Christie said in his keynote. You get respect. Our president's trying to be loved by everybody, and therefore no respect, and we're just going to keep getting beat up. Whereas if you stand and fight, you may not get love initially, but you're going to get respect.
Well, this has to have been a tough 3.5 years for President Obama, too, because think about it. Put yourself in his situation. Every time in his life when he didn't get what he wanted, he could give a beautiful speech or give some beautiful words, and he always got what he wanted. He got Ivy League schools, it's just amazing the things that have been greased for him. Gets a great home in a great location next to another rich guy. Well, wait, that guy may be in prison. But anyway, just basically gives a good speech. And so it has to have been extremely frustrating for our president not to have had everybody bow and scrape to him after he gives a really pretty speech.
Yeah.
But you don't impress terrorists by saying pretty words and apologizing. And I had weeping parents that I was talking to yesterday. We were at an event together, and I visited with them again this morning. Their son was killed on the Chinook in Afghanistan as a member of Team SEAL Team 6, and you had first the vice president, then the president congratulating SEAL Team 6. At first they didn't. They wouldn't say who did it. That's the way it's supposed to be. But these parents said after Biden outed SEAL Team 6, in the case of saying congratulations, aren't they something? They're amazing. That within a matter of hours, their son called and said, "Mom, you got to go online, get everything off any social media that relates to me at all, because there's chatter out there. They'll come after all. Now they know it's SEAL Team 6. They're going to come after us. They're going to come after our family. So get everything off the internet." I mean, that's our own administration that did it to our heroes by not keeping their mouths shut about who did it.
Yeah.
And as a result, we had almost a couple of dozen of our top SEAL operatives in the Chinook killed, along with the people that were flying the Chinook. One they shouldn't have been on. That was not their aircraft. And then there's going to be a lot of information coming out about just how horrible the rules of engagement are that are getting our soldiers, our military killed unnecessarily.
I tell you what, it's hard to believe a lot of the things that are happening in this situation. It's almost like we want to lose. That seems to be the mentality. And fortunately though, Louie, we got guys like you and Michelle and others in Congress that are bringing light to this stuff. And I know you guys have been getting hammered, and we just want to tell you, God bless you for what you're doing. We stand with you. We want to get the truth out there. We appreciate you being willing to uncover the truth and fight for it. And I just want to tell you, man, help is on the way. The American people are behind you. I believe there's a red, white, and blue tsunami coming in November, and we're going to change a lot of things. It's going to take a long time. It's not going to happen overnight, but because you have been willing to stand for years and tell the truth, it's possible for us to come alongside you now and help. So thank you for what you do, brother.
Thanks so much, Rick. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And people understand, as Christians, we don't hate Muslims. We embrace them. Some are good friends, helpful friends that help us in tough situations here and abroad. But we are not going to turn a blind eye to the fact that it is radical Islamic jihadists that want to destroy our way of life. We need to recognize that.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much, Rick.
Congressman, appreciate you coming on. Keep up the great work.
All right, thank you.
You've been listening to Wall Builders Live with David Barton and Rick Green.